Hey guys, and welcome back to this week's video. So, after the Arctic trip, we reckon Norm needs some upgrades. And let's start with his rear end. I reckon it's time for a bit of a switch up. It was useful for Scandinavia because obviously you never know when you're going to get fuel. As we found out, you do nearly run out sometimes. So it always comes in handy. Now if you remember, a few videos back, I mentioned about this. I bought this as a bit of an impulse purchase. It's essentially a rear door locker for a van. Now, that's got me thinking. I want to get it on this van. It's reignited a fire inside me. I think we need to do it. But, being a tight Yorkshireman, some of them are very expensive. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to see just how hard it is to make our own. Now, I might regret saying that in the future, but we'll see how it goes. So let's head down to the workshop. So the first thing I've done is I've modelled it in CAD. So let's jump into that and let's show you how we've started it. So you can see here, this is roughly the design we're going for. So you've got two bolts in the centre of the door. Then you've got two into the hinges. This will have a standoff plate and this one will bolt straight into the bottom. And then we've just got a standard A-frame cross. Very similar to many other designs. If I move the box out of the way, you can sort of see then how it's going to sit. And then all we'll have is essentially 4 holes with some bolts coming through from the back, and then we can bolt the box straight onto the A-frame. So now that we've showed you how we're going to make it, let's head out to the bench and let's show you what materials we've got for the job. So let's take you through the materials. So we've got 40mm by 2mm flat bar. This will create the offset stands that will then bring the frame out far enough from the hinges to meet the centre of the door correctly. We've then got 2 lots of 25mm by 2mm box. This will create the basic A-frame that we can then mount the box to. So now that you've seen the materials, I think it's time to start measuring. So essentially this is how we're going to do it. We've got 25mm by 25mm box here. We're going to be attaching it to the hinges. Behind the hinges is actually hollow. So like any of the other designs, you have to drill through from the back side of the hinge and bring a bolt out to sandwich it to it. We'll then create a plate that comes out from this hinge to create the correct angle for the bar away from the door, because we also need to tie it in over here to the centre of the door. This stops the hinges flexing, which then gives you the strong bond between the door, allowing you to put the extra weight on the bag without stretching anything out and keeping the doors correctly shutting. So we'll bring the plate out from here, straight to the back side of this box section. This will then create us the correct plane to work across the door with. So now that we've measured out, we're going to use our trusty angle grinder to cut out the correct sizes for exactly what we need. But safety first, kids, and safety squints are not the answer. So let's put proper PPE on. Let's do this. At this point here, you can start to see how the hinge offset's going to work. So essentially that plate will pull it out to the correct angle, which will then give us a nice gap between the door and it, and everything should be rosy. For anyone not quite sure why I'm making an offset plate, essentially the door bends here, so it comes perfectly straight there and then kicks for the windows and goes up. That's why a lot of the ladders have got the bends in like that one has. So what we've got to do is we're coming straight off this, going straight up, but obviously as you follow that, that gap increases. So what we've got to do is bring a plate out to meet it, which will then keep us straight with the centre of the door there. Okay, so next job, I need to get this plate, which is the standoff for the hinge, welded to this upright bar, which is going to go from the bottom hinge to the top hinge. But to do that, we need to mark it in the right place. So we've got some Tipp-Ex. So what we'll do is, much like woodworking, when you want to do something away from what you're working on, hold it up to it, get it all in the right place, do 2 lines, and then you can line it up on the bench afterwards, tack weld it together, check it's in the right place, and then fully weld it up. So the first rule of welding, make sure your metal's clean. So annoyingly I can't find a flap disc, but I've got a grind disc. That's the next best thing. You can clean up the metal, get some real good exposed edges like you've got there. This is a MIG welder, and you've got your argon gas bottle on the back. I've welded about 4 times in my life. So neither am I a professional, nor do I do it for a living, nor do I do it as a hobby even. This is, if I can do it, anyone at home can do it. Basics of it. It's Clark 220 MIG welder. You've got your basic functionality on this. You've got your on switch, you've got your wire feed speed. That's how quickly the weld wire comes out the end of the torch. You've got your spot timer. That's sort of irrelevant for what we're doing at the minute. And then you've got your temperature. Now that basically means, in layman's terms, do I blow through the metal and put a hole in it, or does it weld nicely? Too cold, it doesn't weld properly. Too hot, it blows holes through the metal. Top things for safety, get yourself a mask, because you cannot look at the light from a welder on the MIG, and some good gloves, because ultimately things get very hot. Keep yourself safe when you're doing it. This, we will show you in a second, shows that I clearly don't know exactly what I'm doing, but with enough fiddling around on the settings, you can get there in the end. So Jess, if you come in close, we'll start with this. So I believe this is what welders call chicken, where it literally just spatters and makes a huge mess. There's zero penetration, which means actually melting the metal. You can see here, not enough heat, but too much wire, reduced heat, still too much wire, reduced wire here and increased the heat a touch. And then here, I've kept the wire speed the same, but turned up the heat a bit. And then you can see towards this end here, I slowed down and started to get really good penetration, as far as I'm aware, through this. And Calvin, I know you're watching, so judge me in the comments. Calvin is a professional welder by trade that follows us. I met him at an event called Van Tribe, and some of the work he does is absolutely incredible. So now I'm going to do this, which is the actual workpiece. And I'm just going to try and do a tack weld in each corner. Now, for anyone that doesn't know, tack weld is something you use just to hold it in place, so you can mock up, and generally you can quite easily either cut it off with a cutting wheel on a grinder, or sometimes even just smack it off if you've got a small enough tack on there. You can see here, this went a bit too fast and it sort of blobbed on the surface. Again, not too much of a problem. Here you can see it's really started to penetrate down through. Now don't forget, when you're welding, especially when you're new, a grinding disc on an angle grinder is kind of your best friend, because as long as you get penetration, it doesn't really matter how it looks. You can grind it back and then you can paint it, and to be honest, at that point, no one's really going to know. It'd just be, you know, your own little secret. But as long as it's strong, that's all that matters. So let's test fit. The standoff is tacked on, and you can see there, it stands it off just right, leaves a very minuscule gap down the back of the door, and bolts into the bottom hinge. So what we'll do now is we'll fully weld that up. Okay, so now that we've got the upright done, and I think it roughly sits in the right position, we need to make the L bracket out of this flat plate steel here. So I'm going to make it bigger than I need, because then I can work out exactly where I want the A structure to come across. So all we'll do is we'll clamp some box section across this to this. That'll then place this upright in the correct position. Then we can drill through into this hinge, and then we know that's in the right place in relation to the center of the door. And then it should mean that the whole thing is square, and then all we've got to do is put a cross brace across to the bottom hinge, which obviously will have our angles already worked out, so it'll just be a case of mark, mark, cut, weld it all in, test fit mount in the box that we've got for the back, and then paint it all up and get it all mounted, and it's done. Let's get the L made, and then we'll move on to the next step. So essentially now we've got our two pieces of 40mm plate that is 150mm long. And essentially all we're going to do is make a bracket like that. So it'll stick to the van and your A-frame will come down and meet this. But a really useful tool for getting right angles when welding is these. They're essentially magnets. So you see, like that. All you do then is you place your piece like the angle that you want, bring that in, and it will hold at a 90-degree angle, which is perfect for making this. Now what I will address is I know a lot of you in the comments are saying, well, why didn't you buy angle? I didn't think about it, is the honest answer. So we're making our own. All we'll do is flip this up, make sure your edges are all nice and jointed, sort of like that. They're all nice, and then all you do is lay a bead weld down there. Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt. Right, so now the tack welds are done to hold that in place. We can take it off these mounts and then crack on. In the interest of showing you, some of it welded nicely, some of it didn't, and it turned a bit to chicken. Not entirely sure why. The metal surface was prepped. I know in this corner I was trying to get into somewhere quite tight alongside the ground clamp. But yeah, time to get this off the back doors. We've got our markings out here for our holes. So we've got across there. This is our centre line. I've marked this on the door as well as on here, and obviously that just points to up so that we know that it sits on the van like that. So we're going to hit these with a centre punch, and that just means that when you put it in the drill press, this here, that the drill bit doesn't then skate around on the surface. If you give it a divot in the top, it'll then track the drill bit straight through that hole and give you a nice clean hole exactly where you want it. There you go, so you've got a hole, that'll just give you drill bit, something to locate on. So we'll start with small drill first. So there we go, we'll give that a bit of a clean up. Currently I think we've got two 6mm holes in, so let's go drill the holes through the van. Let's do it! So hopefully you can start to see how it's coming along. So I think that's where we're going to leave you for tonight. We'll pick up again tomorrow night, because again, like normal people, we have normal jobs. So all of these videos get filmed after work, before work, or on the weekends. So yeah, we're sort of trying to cram this in as we can. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it so far. We'll catch you tomorrow night. Come down before work, it's currently 6 AM, to start mocking this up. So essentially last time we saw you, we've got this here, which is all nicely mounted, and then we've got the bar down here. Now what we've done, if I bring you in, we've obviously just mocked it up on a piece of wood that gets it at the right height. So that's where it's going to bolt into the hinge, and then up there is just taped, but you can see also where it's going to bolt into the hinge. Now I'll put on screen, I've tested this with the spirit level on the phone, so we'll see how accurate that is, but I couldn't find the big one in the workshop. This is showing as perfectly level to the floor. So I think, now that we've got this done, it'd be a good time to drill that hinge, drill that hinge, and because that's already bolted on, we can then start figuring out our cross braces to go over there. Now, I do have to point out, I'm on my own this morning because Jess has taken one of the family members to a hospital appointment. Not that I'm sure she'd have been too keen before work at getting up, come down the workshop and do this. So if any of the camera work is a little bit dodgy, I apologise. But we'll get the holes drilled in the upright first. We've got them marked here in Tipex where I need to drill through. And then once that's done, we can get this held up against it. It's all marked. I've marked the hinges with pencil, so we know where it needs to go back to. And then that will give us the holes on the doors so we can make sure everything lines up nicely and then drill the hinges, which is the scary part.
Guess I woke up today and just chose chaos.
So now I got a hole drilled in there. Now I got a hole drilled in there. So let's just whack it on the grinding wheel and just tidy them up a little bit so there's no big burrs.
So turn up my song and feel free to stare. I don't care.
Now though, it does mean it's time to drill the hinges. So let's give that a go and see how we get on. I'm really hoping I don't pop the glass. I've centre punched the holes, so let's give it a go. We'll start smallest and then work up. Right, so there we've got the beginnings of it. We've got this mounted in here, got this mounted in here. It is still loose, it's just test fitting obviously. Got this mounted in here, again, also loose, bit of wiggle room on it. Sits perfectly with the side of the door. It is level, which is what I was after, to make sure that the box sits at the right skew on the back door. So you can see basically how the frame's starting to come together. It's starting to get quite exciting actually. So let's try mocking up a piece of metal across and then see what we end up with. And it's probably quite awkward to see because there's a lot of stuff. If I sort of pull that forward and push that back, you can see just how close that is to the number plate. And I think it's probably still going to have to go up taller than that. I was hoping to start it here, but I think realistically, because of the depth of this, it's going to have to go up to at least the top of this trim, which isn't a problem. We've got plenty of space. It'll just dictate where we start the bars going across. We might make them much lower. I feel like that's a much more reasonable height. We're now well above number plate height. Let's just centre it up, shall we? So 17 to that bracket, and about 17 to that bracket. So that's roughly where it's going to be on the van. Let's figure out our angles. Yeah, and let's go from there. Got a little mark on there. Cut that with a grinder, and then we'll start to bring it in roughly to where we need it. Right, let's see what we're looking like. So that's roughly where we want it here. That sort of angle. Boom. Perfect. First time with a grinder. That's not bad going actually. So this feels like a perfect time to remember that I have a handy dandy angle finder. If you just lay that edge over, and then now we have our perfect angle. With that angle finder, it's absolutely perfect there. So that's not welded or anything, that's just held in place. So we've got one weld there. What I'm going to do now that that's in and that's sat where it wants to be, I'm going to get the upright done and we'll see how that one goes. Wish me luck. There we go. That's the basic frame all notched out. So now that everything's in good alignment, off camera I've just put a bar across here just to make sure that this is level with this, so that when we put the box on, it all stays nice. But I think we're getting there. Everything's tack welded in as far as the cross members. But all the bolt holes still all line up and everything else. We've got to fully weld it up and then grind it back. Get it looking nice and finished. And then I think we can move towards paint. Right, all the welds ground down now, everything is fully welded. They're not the prettiest, but to be honest, they seem to be strong. So it's kind of all I can ask for. Well, it's starting to get dark in this area of the workshop now, but that is it. It's fully welded up, it's bolted on, it is strong, and it is not going anywhere, which is all you can ask for. So next job, we're going to drill some holes through after we've put the box up to it. So now what we need to do is drill some holes through. I've marked on each side with Tipp-Ex to indicate where the box is going to be. So I know if I drill in between those lines, I'm going to hit the inside of the box. We're now bolted in, bolted in, bolted in, and we've got our 4 captive bolts sticking out right on the outer edges of the box, so should give us as much purchase as possible. I've kept these ultra long because I either had something that only just came through or these. So go with these, I can cut them back. If anyone doesn't know how to cut a bolt back, whiz a nut on it and then slice it off, and then when you take it back off, the act of the bolt coming back over will then re-tap what thread is slightly nailed on the end. But yeah, I am quite happy with how that's come out. It's all square, it's all nice. But now we are perfectly timed to start priming. So let's get some paint on it. Let's rub it down, then let's clean it. And then we've got our etch primer to go on. The finish we've picked is Stone Guard Black from High Coat. Hopefully it should be nice and durable anyway, just to, you know, sit on the back and be abused. We are now completely primered, so I'm going to leave that overnight. First thing tomorrow morning, come back down, we'll whack on this Stone Guard stuff. Hopefully it should give a nice enough finish. I'm expecting it to sort of be a matte black. That's what it says apparently and what the photos look like anyway. So all in all, great progress this evening. I think it's currently nearly 10 o'clock. So I'm heading home. But yeah, great progress. I'll see you bright and early in the morning. So it's currently 7:30. I've just come down this morning just to see how it looks. It's looking really good. We need to key it, and then we need to spray black paint on it, get colour on it, and then hopefully tonight we can get it on the van, because I'm ready for it to be on now. I want to see it all mounted up and all done. So I'm going to get it sprayed today. It's got all day. In here it gets quite warm. It's meant to be sunny today, so hopefully that will help bake it, and then when we come down tonight, we should be absolutely fine just to handle it. So it's all keyed. Let's crack on with our black. Right, so the first coat's on. I'm going to give it a couple more minutes just to flash off. It's only a dust coat, so it shouldn't take too long. And then we'll go for the first proper coat. That's now flashed off. Let's get on with the second coat. Number 2 coat, done. Catch you for the third one. So I've just run the heat gun round. It's now flashed off. So coat number 3. Got 3 coats on the dust coat, then 2 thick coats. It's all come out quite nicely, to be fair, other than some of my welding. But like I say, from a distance, she looks all right. And I'm pretty damn happy with how that's come out. After 5 nights, it's completed. So it's all painted up, it's all mounted properly, it is on there. So, on to the last step. Let's get the box mounted onto here. But first we need to drill some holes. So let's get that done now. A good little trick to find out where your bolts go, or where you need to drill holes in something, is to put something like Tipp-Ex on there. So usually I'll use the Mrs. nail varnish, but just something that can pull on the surface and then leave an impression on the box, and then we know exactly where we need to drill. And there you go, you can see exactly how that works. So 1 dot, 2 dot, 3 dots and 4 dots. Let's drill it out. We've started off small, let's go with something a bit bigger. Well, that's it done. I hope everyone's enjoyed this sort of tutorial-esque video on how to make this. I basically saw it as it costs a lot of money to buy one pre-done, and screw it, why not have a go at it myself? For anyone interested, we're about £37 into this, I think. About £18 in metal and about £19 in paint. Now, overall, I'm very happy with how it came out. Some of the welds aren't absolutely fantastic, but I mean, you can literally rock the van by it. It is on there and it is strong, which is all I'm really worried about. Now, I know some of you are saying, well, you already had a welder, and yes, we have one down the workshop, but one thing to consider, £36 in metal, another one of these carriers, which is not a cargo carrier, it is a spare wheel carrier, so you'd have to modify it anyway, sets you back about £360 from one company, and you'd still have to modify it and you'd still have to get it finished. So let's say about £100 in powder coat. Well, at that point, in my eyes, you could build this, have the satisfaction of doing it yourself, buy a new tool and learn a new skill, which I think is quite important in life. There's not enough people working and doing stuff with their hands anymore. A lot of people like me work in IT and yeah, don't really do anything like that. So I think it's quite fun to keep skills like this alive. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. Remember to like, comment and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.